This is Innovation and Leadership, where we interview Navy SEALs, venture capitalists, pro athletes, best-selling authors, Hollywood filmmakers, really as many different kinds of high achievers as we can get to come on the show. Today's episode is going to be from our mini-series that we created with Corporate Alliance, asking top CEOs and executives and entrepreneurs who have had very large exits, specifically about their thoughts on leadership and people. Also, I want to talk to you about one of our show's sponsors. I met these guys back on episode 6. CEO Zach Smith was telling me all about starting a skateboard company and how much he hated doing the bookkeeping for a skateboard shop, and how he really got led to start this business, Bookly, that's a hybrid combining bookkeeping software and human services. And I'll tell you why I let him become a sponsor. It's because I use their service now. I don't love paying $50 an hour for bookkeepers to do stuff that I know software could do way, way cheaper. But I don't love bookkeeping at all. So I want a real live human who knows what they're talking about to help me with the stuff I don't understand. Probably the straw that broke the camel's back for me, though, the thing that put me over the top, was that they could do my taxes and payroll also. So totally suggest checking them out. Go to their website, bookly.co, and check out their flat rates. I've been super happy with them. So now on to today's episode. Dave, when we were ending off part 1 there, we were talking about the value of meeting with the right people and kind of getting out of our own silo and getting new ideas to innovate our businesses. Who's one of your heroes, or who's someone that you've got inspiration for as you've grown your organization so large?
Well, I think one of those people from Corporate Alliance specifically, one of the areas we have found great value with Corporate Alliance is their ability to connect us with some key people. And we had a change. We knew we had a change in a marketing leader coming up for us several months ago. And so first person that I reached out to was Jeff Rust with Corporate Alliance. And I just said, hey, we're looking to make a change here. We're going to move this from a director position to a CMO position, Chief Marketing Officer. Do you have any thoughts? And so he gave me a couple thoughts, and we interviewed them and ultimately hired one of those that he sent us to, a guy by the name of Jeff Wasden. And Jeff has, when you talk about inspirational, something very exciting for me. What I love about what we have the opportunity to do is to surround ourselves with people that we feel like are smarter than us. And I'm surrounded by a whole lot of them in my office right now. I'm looking out across my office as I'm talking with you, and I see a whole lot of people that I feel like are smarter than me. And I think it's an important thing as a leader, number one, not to be challenged by somebody who is smarter than you, and to embrace that and understand that is how we're able to grow and develop. But Jeff, when we interviewed him, and I so appreciate Jeff Rust for connecting us with him, but he made a statement to me. He used to run Coke in Central America, and he was involved down in Costa Rica. And he said, what we developed over a period of time with Coca-Cola was about 5 or 6 points that we knew if we put those 5 or 6 pieces into the puzzle before we rolled into a new market, we knew we would have a successful launch, and we knew that we would scale well in that market. And when we made the decision to hire and bring him on, I said, now I want you to go develop that exact same thing for Costa Vida. That when we open in a new market, we know if we hit these 5 or 6 things, we will open well and we will scale well. And we're not completely there yet. Jeff's been with us just a few months now, but there's several elements of that are in place. That is very inspiring and fun for me when you can look and say that we develop through the information that we have and through data that we gain a practice that we know when we institute or that we execute against that practice that we will be successful. That becomes really exciting. So that's an inspiring part of the business world for me.
Yeah, I'm thinking about something we were talking about in part 1 about how a lot of your staff, they're high school or they're college age kids, and this is not necessarily a long-term career choice, right?
Yeah.
But obviously for you folks at the top, with the level of success you've had, you're probably not, I'm guessing you're going to stick with with what's going.
Yeah.
I think about leadership and how many times for us who are maybe running an organization, it's easy to project our values or our what we think should be important to people on others. And I'm interested in how you navigate that, or what you train for your more senior people of. How do you get dialed into these people who we need to work with them, but we can also recognize this may not be the rest of their life? Of, you add on top of all that what we were talking about in episode 1 of sometimes customers aren't their best selves when they're buying things in our stores. Do you have any tips about how you guys do it, or just principles that apply to how to make the hard right decision instead of the easy wrong decision?
Yeah, I think that's great. And I heard a saying one time that I think is really valuable, which is your mission and your vision is what is talked about in the halls, not necessarily what's written on the walls. I think a lot of organizations and a lot of companies will have a mission statement, or they will have a vision statement up on the wall, but there is a disconnect between what they do in the day-to-day whirlwind of business and what is written on the wall. And I think when we talk about getting buy-in and we talk about real engagement with the team, at our entry level in our restaurants, we know 16, 17, 18, 19, 20-year-old young men, young women, this may not be a career for them. Most of the people that we work with in our office, this hopefully will be a career. We want to have these people with us for a long, long time. And again, I mean, a lot of the people I'm looking at right now are people that have been with us 10 years, 12 years, 13 years. I mean, long time. And I think what helps to build that, and this has been a progressive learning experience for us, but really when we make decisions and when we look to, as we're building our team, that we try to do that as much through that vision and as much through that mission, which honestly, a lot of them helped create. I mean, this was a collaborative effort with our executive team. We went off site for about a week as we were developing and strategizing around who do we really want to be when we grow up, and where do we really want to go, and what is most important to us. Well, sometimes some of those things that are kind of lofty and grand, when you talk about them, become a little bit distant when we think about, hey, I got to make payroll coming up on Friday. And does that cause us to make a different decision that is no longer in sync with who we say that we are, or a value that we have listed up on a wall? And that is where, in my mind, that real leadership comes through, is to be able to say, no, we will put those values first. We will put who we ultimately want to become first, and we're going to have to figure out payroll on Friday, and we're going to have to figure out some of these other tough things, but we're going to stay true to who we are. I think that is where you begin to get tremendous buy-in and tremendous loyalty from teams when they see that, wow, these things really are ultimately most important. I mean, we're all in the same situation. We're all fighting through, more regulations and more challenging business landscape and environment than earlier in our careers, for sure. But we continue to mold, we continue to adapt, we continue to become better and better at what we do, and none of us can get there without the brilliant creative minds of the people that we work with, who really have the opportunity just to focus in some real distinct areas that honestly we ourselves just are not able to drill down to such a to that kind of level, because we got so many different things we're working on.
So what about those tough times when the temptation really is there to not be your best self? Do you have any just things you tell yourself, or is there any, what's the Dave Rutter's tips and tricks for when the temptation is really strong to not be your best self?
Well, and there have been plenty of times where I haven't been my best self, and I think that that is one of those things that you look at, and as you reassess your day, one of the things that I have done this, and I, like a lot of people, have probably gotten some of these things through Stephen Covey, but one of the things that I have developed for myself that I do each morning that I read is my own personal mission statement. So in addition to what we do on the company level, I have a mission statement that I read, and um, I think that you develop tremendous strength because when you are in a leadership role, there are ultimately things that you really don't have anybody else that you can turn to. I mean, you can definitely get coaching and you can definitely get counsel, and we have really built this business has really been built with a whole lot of great team members, but it's been my business partner and I. And this last July, he left for 3 years on a mission for the LDS Church, and so we kind of consolidated his role and my role, and now I have both of those roles. And so we still will talk some, but that kind of day to day ability to bounce ideas off is changed for me from what it was. And so I love the partnership model. I've been in partnerships in my life that have not been great, and I've had this partnership that has been tremendous for me. My partner Sean Collins and I have been business partners for, gosh, coming up on, I guess, 20 years. And so it is a little bit different to be in a situation now where I don't have that same ability to bounce things off, but it's been a fun learning experience as well. And so I think that when you do have that temptation, we all do have those temptations from time to time, and there's going to be times, like I said before, where we're not necessarily our best selves, and all we can do when we have that is to regroup at the end of the day and say, okay, I could have handled that better, and next time I'm presented with that, I will handle that better, and I'll do better. And I hope and feel that I'm a better leader today than I was a year ago, and better then than I was 2 years before that, and that we continue to grow and develop. And luckily, we work with great people who are patient with us as we work our way through some of those learning curves. But I think it's important, just as we have mission and vision and values in an office environment, we really need to define those um, individually for ourselves, and so we can kind of reset ourselves and make sure that we do stay focused on not what matters at the moment, but really ultimately what matters most.
I feel like you said a number of interesting things, but one that I want to go back to is this idea of reading your individual mission statement daily. In our work, we're super interested in kind of self-programming and the value of meaningful repetitions and these kind of things in helping shape our own futures by the habits we build in ourselves. Can you talk about any more about the value of going through something like that on a daily basis, which obviously you know it by now, but it sounds like you keep reading it anyways.
Yeah, I think that there are, your point of self-programming. I think it's such an interesting point because for a lot of people, I think, we graduate and leave high school and we stop reading books. We stop developing our minds. We stop doing those things to help us grow. And we want the world and those around us to conform to our way of thinking rather than learning that, no, what I've done to this point has gotten me to where I am. And if I want to get better than where I am, I need to change. I need to be humble and willing enough to change. And so I think for me, my own personal way is my first hour or so in the morning, right after I get up, is my study time, and that's where I just and normally nobody else is up in my house at that time. I'm an early riser, so I just have a quiet environment where I really have the opportunity to learn and let my mind go a little bit and not be so busy sometimes in our day to day. We're running from one meeting to the next, and it's important that we have those times in our day where we can disconnect just for a minute and think and make sure that we're on track with our goals, because it's so easy to get twisted off course just a little bit because of things that are thrown at us. And so if we never have that time to kind of regroup and reset ourselves and say, no, this is what's ultimately most important to me. If we don't take those times, I think it's easy to get off course. So I think it's tremendously important on a daily basis to continue to develop and expand our minds in mission statement as we've discussed, but also in reading and listening and learning and continuing to develop our mind and grow our abilities.
I think that's great advice. Shifting gears here again. I know we're closing in on episode 2 being done pretty quick here. I'd love to hear your thoughts on growing a bigger business. I think there's a lot of people who, they have some idea, for the guy who actually started the business themselves, right? They get into the single digit millions and they're doing okay. But obviously, where you've got the kind of expansion that's, in the tens of millions of dollars here and bigger, in your mind, what makes the difference? What's the difference between those folks that, they can have a business that makes a good living versus, building the kind of system that you guys have obviously grown into?
I think, Jess, honestly, it gets back to what we were talking about just a second ago. It's I heard it explained one way one time where it's like putting a ring or a band onto a tree limb, and it fits onto the tree limb and can slide on there just fine. But as that tree continues to grow and that limb becomes bigger, the tree sometimes will grow around, or sometimes if it's left on there, it will always grow around that ring that's on there. And I think sometimes as leaders, we're like that ring on a tree limb. And if we don't continue to grow, we can actually become the hindrance to that business growing bigger because it has to be our way, or this is the way we've always done it, so this is the way that we continue to do it, rather than to rely on maybe younger and in some cases brighter minds, at least brighter in some areas that allow things to grow to the next level. I mean, we see stuff like this happen all the time, and as we maybe make a change in a position in our business, somebody that fantastic person, very, very integral part of as we grow, but kind of hit the point where they're kind of not willing to learn, anymore, and they're not willing to continue to develop and grow. And so you kind of hit this stopping point of, that worked great when we had 20 stores. It doesn't work anymore as we're closing in on 100 stores. I mean, we can't do things the same way. And so we need to learn to think bigger, and we need to think more broadly. And so I think that's a big part of the difference between, somebody who their business kind of hits a plateau and it kind of stays there versus somebody else who breaks through that plateau, because we're always going to have these kind of false ceilings. But as we break through those and we kind of hit to new levels that we're growing towards, it's really just the battles that we fight and the 6 inches between our ears, that as we continue to learn and grow and develop better ways to do things. And honestly, a lot of times, to me, those things come in our really challenging, trying times. Let me give you just one quick example. When we experienced the downturn that we experienced in 2007 and 2008, when the economy was struggling, we went from a time where we had had many positive growth quarters, with our business, and all of a sudden that flattened, and then we started to have negative growth. And I remember I was on a hike one Saturday morning, and I was talking to my business partner Sean, and we were talking as I was coming down the mountain, and we were exploring ideas, and I made the statement to him. I said, you never love times like this when you're in them, but looking back, I really, really value those times, because it's those times when we're really stretched and pressed that truthfully we become so much better. We went into that downturn needing to be at a certain level to be able to be profitable in our restaurants. We came out of that downturn and had dropped that level by $20,000 or $25,000 that we needed to become profitable, because we learned how to be much more efficient during that period of time out of necessity. We had to become much more efficient. And so it's this idea of saying, okay, sometimes those targets move on us, and it's nothing that we did, but the economy moves a target on us. Wow, we better for darn sure be able to adapt and evolve, or we kind of get run over. Yeah, it's a principle that's taught in the book, Who Moved the Cheese, and it's a great, quick, little, easy read, but it teaches a fantastic principle of sometimes the cheese gets moved, and we need to learn how to adapt and change to be able to get to where that cheese has gone.
I love it. Kind of leads me to this. I think this will be our final question here, and we'll end it with this. But you're talking about that battle, the 6 inches between your ears, and specifically, like, I felt like you were saying, the humility sometimes to listen to younger minds or brighter minds on some certain subject. Any advice of ways that you get yourself to do that? I think it's pretty easy for those of us who maybe had some bigger success in life to feel like we know how to do things. So any tips about how to conquer yourself, how to rein in your own ego, how to recognize when it's time to lead versus when it's time to shut up and listen?
Well, I think that I think it's a mixture of a lot of things, really. I do consider study and learning to be a key part of that as well, because for me, the more that I study and learn, the more I realize there's so much that I don't know. When you're young and you think you know everything, and I think the older you get, the more you realize, wow, there's so much that I don't learn. And you use the word ego. I think that ego can be in a business environment so damaging, because it's we've all been in environments before where you have one leader and you have 1,000 followers following after, just kind of doing what that leader says. And I think what I've learned, because there's probably been times that maybe I was a little bit that way, or my partner was a little bit that way, and we led our organization somewhat that way. And you realize that you can buy somebody's back, but it's a whole different thing to buy their heart, and buying their back will get you a certain extent. And if ultimately the goal for all of us is we want to build something that is really cool and really special, it's going to take a whole lot more than just what is happening in my mind or what's happening in my partner and I's minds together. We've always kind of operated on this philosophy that 2 heads are better than 1, and 10 are for sure better than 2. And I think that there's sometimes that you can take it to an extreme, because a leader does have to lead. And so I think you sit around a table and you talk through some of these key issues, and then you come out of there with the plan, and this is what we're going to do, and that's the leader's decision to ultimately make. And then it's everybody else that's around that table's responsibility to say, okay, this is what we do. And as we come out of this room, we might have fought tooth and nail about it behind closed doors, but as we come out of this room, people know that executive team or that team that we're working with, we stay together and we work together. And this isn't somebody's idea as we walk out of there. No, this is the decision of the team. And so I just think that is something that we have continually learned and become stronger with, is this idea and the knowledge that we are much stronger as a team than we ever are individually. There's just, people are blessed with different gifts and different abilities, and as leaders we have some of those, but we definitely don't have the full complement. And there's other people in your organization that, given the chance to actually be creative and to think on their own, can amaze you with what they're able to accomplish and do.
That's great. Well, listen, we appreciate you spending so much time here with us today on the show.
Well, thank you so much. It's been fun talking with you, Jess.
Great. Thanks, everybody, for listening, and we'll end it there. Well, that's it for the episode. One other thing I wanted to tell you about, if you'll remember the guys from Convoy in episodes back, Ken Free and Trent Mano, I went on one of their CEO trips to New York, and I met a guy named Brent Thompson, very successful entrepreneur. He was former CEO of Jive Communications, big company now, I think $300 or $400 million. anyways, he started a new company called blipbillboards.com. I'm super stoked they're a sponsor now. But I remember a year and some ago when I met him, I thought it was genius. Instead of having to buy 6 months or a year's worth of billboard for thousands of dollars, you can buy 8 seconds at a time for like 10 or 20 cents. You pick what billboard you want it on, what time of day you want it to run, and it just puts so much power in the hands of marketers and CEOs who want to try something and see if it works. You can buy as many or as few as you want, change it as many times as you want. I think now our podcast is being advertised on billboards in like 18 different states because we have these guys as sponsors. We're pretty excited about it. Hope you check out blipbillboards.com. Thanks.